Welcome back to our panel discussion, Modern Budgeting, Data-Driven Decision-Making, sponsored by Deloitte here on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. My guests today are Bard Waltman, Managing Director at Deloitte Consulting, and Sean Lublin, Senior Manager at Deloitte Consulting. I'm your moderator, Tom Temin. And earlier we started to discuss a tool that Deloitte has launched to help modernize this whole effort at budgeting that takes so much time and is so difficult. What is that tool and what's it made of and how does it work?
So the tool is called Budget Sync. It's built on the IBM Planning Analytics platform. And it was a offshoot of client examples that we have used where we've implemented with Department of Defense clients. And what we were able to do is integrate their requirements planning, budget formulation, and execution tracking process. So it's not an back-end, accounting system, but it interfaces with an agency's back-end accounting system, pulls over nightly transactions or execution transactions on a nightly basis, and enables agencies to match how their plan is going to their requirements to their execution, so they can see on a regular basis, on a daily basis even, how they're progressing against their plan during the year of execution.
And earlier we talked about the fact that so many different accounting systems used by DoD and all the federal agencies, if there was one system, it might be easier, but there isn't. There's dozens of them, and they all have different data types, data formats. How does the tool normalize for all of the different data sources it might have to pull in?
We use a web service that is able to transfer the data over in, even if it's an unstructured format, where we can then ETL it, extract, transform, and load it into the system so that it then becomes structured with the data that we're collecting on the front end.
And I wonder, is the potential there, and this is a little bit of an aside, but with all of this data being extracted and loaded and normalized, you've got it. Could that form a kind of data lake that could be used for all sorts of high-level analytics at some point?
Yeah, that's the actual plan, Tom, is to use this data as it grows over time for predictive capability. And really, we spoke a little earlier on foresight. It's about taking all that data and really pushing it out, incorporating machine learning in order to really look at the future and what that holds for the agency, to allow them to plan in multiple dimensions in order to address their mission needs and priorities.
So for those people in the agencies that are working late at night with pencils sharpened and looking at spreadsheets that are 1,000 columns deep and 1,000 rows wide, what does this do? What would they see as an alternative to be able to help them do their
families,
work?
Tom, really.
Well, that's true too.
That's the ultimate goal, right? Is to allow them to do this better and faster and cheaper in the long run with a lower total cost of ownership, higher productivity, and better decision making.
We have specific client examples where we have implemented this suite of tools, and it has resulted in taking processes that were weeks and months long down to days and hours long.
And what does the front end look like? I mean, what are they looking at when they're instead of those spreadsheets?
Well, we've created a modernized user interface that enables dashboarding and visualization capability, so they don't even have to show rows and columns to non-financial people anymore. They can actually show visuals that depict the data that is underlying it in a less spreadsheet manner.
All right, so what does this do to the budget process? I mean, what do they do alternately that they have been doing now?
Well, the process itself doesn't really change, Tom. What changes is the way we approach it and the way it's completed. And by allowing our COTS tools to do the vast majority of the work for us, it frees up time for the analyst to actually do analysis and scenario planning and looking at the underlying data. And again, I'll stress this, just to make better business decisions. We're in an era of do more with less. Budget cuts are here, and they're probably here to stay relative to manpower. So our tool allows the analysts to do far more than they did in the past by automating a lot of the processes that previously were manual.
That's a great point, Bart. It actually instantiates the processes that exist today for agencies, and a lot of agencies have unique processes, and we're able to configure the tool to enable them to continue with their unique processes while reducing the amount of data entry that is required upon the analysts and users.
And are there any particular systems requirements for this? Do they have to add another data center to run this kind of software, or how does it work?
No, I mean, we can actually ingest the spreadsheets they have currently. We've done that before. We load them into our system, and then we normalize the data with the analyst population. And then over time, they just start now operating in the system.
So it's a cloud type of application.
It can be on-prem or cloud. So we can build it in servers that are on-premise, or we can build it in a cloud environment.
And is this something is it a one-time license? Just give us a sense of the business implications of installing a thing like this.
Yeah, generally there are certainly the underlying license fees go along with the purchase of the planning analytics platform from IBM, and generally speaking, the consulting footprint, our footprint goes down, and the agency tends to become much more self-sufficient over time because of the automated way of doing this, and so they don't need an army of outside contractors helping them create their budgets. They become far more self-sufficient. And as it grows in capability, Tom, it allows those analysts to become almost completely self-sufficient.
And Bard just touched on a huge benefit of the tool that we haven't really discussed, which is data management. All of the data management layer is handled on the front end by the analysts and by the users, or by proctors at the enterprise level. So it doesn't need an army of consultants in the back end to continue to add data elements as their budget structures grow.
All right, so that as budgeting becomes a more data-driven activity, then the question arises about data analytics and predictive analysis and all of these other important tools that are coming on that people are aware of, but maybe not deploying so much. Do you see that becoming part of the budgeting process as time goes forward?
We see it as becoming a major part of the process because, again, as analysts are not burdened with a lot of these manual processes or circulating massive spreadsheets or documents around the agency, it allows them the time to actually look for those relationships in the data that were just not visible prior to having that insight into multiple data sources, bringing all of that data into a single environment to look at those relationships and see, wow, this is what the future is based on not only the past, hindsight, but looking at current data, having the insight, combining those two together really produces the capability of predictive analysis. So.
As Bard mentioned earlier, hindsight is easy. Insight is difficult currently, and foresight is where we need to get to. And the predictive analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, that is heading in the foresight arena or area, but you can't get there without having the structured data that provides insight.
Correct.
All right, good place to end the discussion on. Thank you both very much. Our guests today have been Sean Lublin, Senior Manager at Deloitte Consulting, and Bard Waltman, Managing Director at Deloitte Consulting. I'm Tom Temin, Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsradio.com. Use the search term Deloitte.